Good morning. Thank you for coming back this morning. I hope all of you enjoyed last evening, and certainly many of you were at the wonderful reception in the Palazzo Turini at which the Deputy Mayor spoke. So we're set for our final day of the global gathering, and we're starting with what I think is going to be a very fascinating panel and to talk about making accountability relevant for people's nutrition, featuring the 2015 Global Nutrition Report. And I'm handing over to the very capable hands to facilitate this session of Emorn, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Welcome. This session is very appropriate to be on the last day. We have been speaking about, from the first day on, the accountability. The accountability issue to me, and I think to many of us, is to walk the talk and earn the trust. Now, building trust is very critical to make whatever we have been putting into the Sun movement works, and also to make it last. So this session will be very much focusing on those elements of trust and accountability. And if you have been here for the past 2 days, there has been a lot of call for data that speaks to different audiences. That is the power that we would like to start off with. So we will start this morning session to present to you the Global Nutrition Report 2015. It is a pleasure to invite Dr. Lawrence Haddad, who's the chair of Global Nutrition Report Independent Expert Group, to share with you the highlights of this year's Global Nutrition Report. Lawrence, please. Please welcome Dr. Lawrence Haddad. Thank you.
Thank you, Emorn. I'm sorry I couldn't be here yesterday. I was supposed to be here, but I was having visa problems. And somebody said to me, but this is Italy, and you're coming from the UK. And I said, well, the UK is, we're still in Europe just about, but it's touch and go. I'm delighted to be able to report on this report. Please pick up a copy if you haven't got one. It's in the stand just over there, just next to the Sun Business Network. Please pick up a copy. I know it's a challenging report to pick up in gravity terms, but it's a very light read. I've only got 15 minutes to present some of the highlights. No, you can't hear me. You can't hear me? Madam, I don't know what you're saying. Speak up. All right. I've only got 15 minutes, 14 and a half minutes to present the report to you. So I'm going to have to skip a lot of it, but I'll present that. I'm going to focus on the data. So if I could, all right. Is this how okay, good. So here's the outline of the report. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we don't have time. Nutrition driving the SDGs, we spent a lot of time on that. We talk about progress on nutrition status, just like we did last year. Progress on nutrition actions, focusing on the N4G actions, but beyond that. We then talk about finance, mostly finance, not so much on capacity. Then there are chapters on climate, food systems, and business. I don't have any time to talk about those, but they're in the report. and I would encourage you to read them. We put them in the report this year because we wanted to broaden the circle of commitment for nutrition, and we felt that in the year of COP21, climate was really important. In the post-ICN2 year, food systems were really important, and business is really important because there isn't enough dialogue on nutrition and business. We're very divided as a community on that, and so we wanted to provide a chapter that would help, at least try to help spark some conversations about how can we bridge that divide. Then we finish on data and some calls to action. So on nutrition driving the SDGs, why should you invest in nutrition? We try to make the case in a number of different ways. Obviously, we're talking to the converted in this audience, but many of you are talking to really difficult people who don't want to hear about nutrition because they've got lots of other things to worry about. They're worrying about climate or economic growth or poverty reduction or trade or infrastructure. Those people, we need to tailor our messages for those people. And so in the report, we go through and say you might want to justify investing in nutrition based on rights arguments. You might want to justify it based on health arguments, and let's not forget 45% of all child deaths under the age of 5 are in one way or another connected to malnutrition. You might want to base it on intergenerational equity, what we do in this generation, how does it affect the chances of the next generation to develop, and we spend a lot of time on the economic rationale for investing in nutrition. On the economic rationale, in the 2014 report, and this is the second report, the 2015 one, on the 2014 report, we spent a lot of time on that panel, that dark blue panel on the left, 16 to 1. If there's one number that I want you to remember of the 2014 report, it's for every dollar you invest in scaling up nutrition-specific action, you get 16 back. That's a very powerful number. It's the median for 40 countries, so it's not just from one country. It has a lot of validity externally as well as internally. But you know, that's just one set of analyses. Will that number and the rate of economic return that it implies, does that hold up to new evidence? So we try to be very evidence-based in the report. And so in the 9 months in between the two reports, we scoured the literature and found, of the reports that look at the economic returns to nutrition, what did they say? And the three new ones are highlighted here. There's one from Brazil, a WFP AUC one from Malawi, and then one from the World Bank covering 4 African countries. And really, it's really reassuring. They all say the same thing, using different data, different methods. They all come to roughly the same conclusion, that the compound rate of interest, the compound rate of return to a nutrition investment is about 10%. If any of you ever get offered that opportunity to make that personal investment with your own money, please take it. It's 1,000,000 times better than anything else that's out there in the stock market and in the bond market. It's a fantastic investment, and it's really reassuring that the new evidence from different countries using different methods and different data comes to roughly the same conclusion. Now, let's talk about status, progress on nutrition status. I think this is one of the best good news pieces out of the 2014 report. Last year, in 2014, we found that only, my eyesight's not good enough, 21 countries were on track to meet the World Health Assembly global targets, and this year 39 are on track. Is it 24 to 39? 24 to 39. Now that's kind of an incredible piece of news, actually. It's not because in the last year we've seen so much amazing improvement. Certainly some of that is reflected in those numbers, but a lot of it is because a lot of new data, actually old data, but newly received, has come in the final year of the MDG period, because there was a lot of MDG reporting in 2015. So, and it shows you the value of having up-to-date data. The picture we had a year ago is totally out of date and totally misleading. We thought 24 countries only, now it's 39. So that's great, because these global targets are quite demanding to 2025. You don't want to get too carried away, however, because there's a big section of countries in the orange and the red that are off course. However, the orange countries is also good because even though they're off course, they're still making progress. They're still reducing stunting. And some of the numbers on stunting are absolutely spectacular. We didn't make a big deal of it in the report because the numbers came in very late. But I think Werner mentioned it yesterday or the day before at this meeting. Ghana, 19% stunting rate. It's fantastic. We used to think, I've been doing this for a long time, and we used to think Africa, stunting, 40%. Well, Ghana and other countries, Kenya, is 26% stunting, I think. These countries are challenging the way we think about stunting in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's absolutely fantastic. On wasting, it's very difficult to do trend data analysis with wasting, so we just use the global target, which is 5%, to get wasting below 5%. And again, you can see an improvement in the number of green countries that are on course between the 2 years. Some progress on under 5 overweight reduction. Remember, this is the third WHA indicator on undernutrition. Again, the number of countries that are on track and making good progress has again increased, which is great. For the first year, this year, we do some working with UNICEF and WHO. We've devised some ways, and they're GNR rules, they're not WHO and UNICEF rules. We've devised some ways of measuring whether countries are on course or off course for exclusive breastfeeding rates. And the good news is that there are quite a number of countries that are on course in the green area. However, the orange, red, and black areas are the majority of the countries. And in the 6 countries in the black area, they're actually quite severe and quite massive reductions in exclusive breastfeeding rates, over 10% reductions in exclusive breastfeeding rates. And importantly, note here, we've only got data to allow this tracking for about 70, I think it's 78 countries. So big data gaps here. So I think there's some good news on the undernutrition report card, and actually lots of good news on the undernutrition report card, but for adult obesity, there's some new data from WHO modeling adult obesity rates between 2010 and 2014. And when we were doing the analyses, I said to the data analysts in the GNR team, let's do a nice chart of who's up, who's on course and who's off course. Being on course means to stop the rise. And as you can see from this slide, no countries have reduced adult obesity rates, which is somewhat of a surprise given the under 5 overweight data, and that's a puzzle because the under 5 overweight and obesity data was not unremittingly bad, but the adult estimates are. Here's the roll-up report card. There's a lot of data on here. It's a very cluttered slide, so obviously I can't go into it in detail, but each row are the indicators that we care about. The top 5 are the WHA undernutrition indicators. We still don't have the right data and the rules for low birth weight, but we hope we'll get that for the 2016 report. And then the bottom 3 ones are the overweight and obesity, obesity only, and diabetes. The red, we don't want to see so much red, we want to see more green. That's what we are trying to do. That's why we get out of bed in the morning, all of us. How to get countries from the red into the green. We also don't want to see so much grey. Grey means we just don't have the data. These are countries without the data. The countries at the bottom, anemia and the 3 overnutrition indicators, look like they don't have a lot of missing data. This is simply because the data are modeled data. Some surveys are used from some countries to project what the other countries will look like. So in many ways, the red data, the red boxes are doubly problematic. They show countries off course, but they also show countries that just don't have enough primary data of their own. We also monitor progress on actions, not just outcomes. We did an analysis of the N4G commitments that were made in London in 2013. How many of those commitments are smart? In other words, are specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-bound. And much to our despair and surprise, we found that only 30% of those commitments made in London, and there are about 300 commitments, were smart. We need to do much better than this in Rio. People are not well served by fuzzy commitments. Fuzzy commitments may help you in your short-term bureaucratic aims in your organizations. They help you feel good and look good, but they don't actually help people who we're trying to help escape malnutrition. In terms of who's on course and who's off course and who responded and who didn't, the percentage of N for G commitments that are on course is roughly the same. It's 44% as opposed to 42% last year. The off course is slightly higher at 10%. What's really troubling though is this 21%, which is the non-response rate. We got 10% non-response in 2014 and a 21% non-response in 2015. Now, I know there wasn't a big gap between the 2014 and 2015 reports, but really, it's not that difficult to report on your N for G commitments. We provide you with what you said you were going to do in 2013, and you just have to give us half a page or a page on what you've done. So despite constant reminders and cajoling and nagging, 21% of the commitments were not reported on. I'll leave it to you to decide whether that's good or not good, but the trend is not good. We, of course, go way beyond N for G actions because N for G is just one set of things that people are doing to reduce undernutrition and malnutrition more broadly. And we remind everyone, and we do some more work on the poor state of coverage data on coverage for the 12 essential nutrition actions. Sometimes we call them nutrition-specific actions, sometimes they're referred to as the Lancet 12. But there are these 12 interventions that we think are high impact in multiple contexts. What we're all trying to do is scale these up, right? But actually, using current data, we won't know if we're doing that because only 3 of the 12 have national level data that are internationally comparable. So only 3 of the 12 have the kind of data that we would like to see. 3 of them have proxy indicators that are kind of okay but not ideal, and the other 6 don't have any comparable data. So if we can't measure how well our coverage is doing, we're just flying blind. We talk about finance a lot. We talk about how we actually need to spend current allocations more effectively. We know that. We need to make the current investment in nutrition work harder for nutrition. But one of the conclusions the chapter comes to is that every country will have to increase its spending on nutrition policies and programs if we're serious about the WHO targets and now about the SDG 2030 targets. So last year when I reported to you at this event, we only had data from 3 countries in terms of how much a country's actually allocating to nutrition in their national budgets. This year we've got 30 countries going through the process on what they're doing, and that's because 30 Sun member countries really stepped up to the plate in 2013. And make no mistake about it, this is a really difficult process to go through. Going through every line item in every budget section, and saying this is nutrition, this is not nutrition, this might be nutrition. For the ones that might be nutrition, what % do we allocate to that? So it's technically a laborious and difficult process. Politically, it's very difficult. What weight do you assign? And if you're a government, this is surely one of the most uncomfortable things you can ever do. Go through your own budget to figure out how much you're spending on nutrition. I wish more N for G signatories would do this beyond governments. It'd be great to have the UN agencies, the donors do it. It'd be great to have some of the NGOs do it as well, and not just the countries. These are the countries that did it, and I really, the Sun Secretariat were amazing in leading this process. We played a small role in supporting them, and I'd like to congratulate those Sun countries for doing this. 14 of them actually completed the exercise by the time we went to press. This is a picture from, this is the Zambian budget document, which I photographed on William Chilufya's desk in Zambia in February of last year. They don't have a PDF version of this, so they have to go through the entire document page by page to do their exercise. What did we find for the 14 countries? The weighted estimates, this is going through all the line items, figuring out what is nutrition, what isn't nutrition, what percent of what weight am I going to assign to that line item for nutrition. After going through the whole thing, not just in health, not just in food, but through all the different sectors in the government budgets. I think that's the median. The median was 1.3%. So 1.3% of government budgets for these 14 countries is allocated to nutrition. Is that a lot? Is that a little? We don't really have any sensible benchmarks. I think the next step is to really develop some sensible benchmarks. But again, when you think about the 16-to-1 investment returns, when you think about 45% of under 5 mortality related to undernutrition, 1.3% doesn't seem like a lot to me. The good news is that there's an upper bound. These 14 countries established an upper bound that they thought they could actually push that 1.3 up to of 4.1%. So that's the good news, I think. The scope for increasing the 1.3% is there, but we need the arguments, we need the energy, and we need the alliances to do that. The donors, I want to, I don't normally do this, but I want to ask you to join me in giving the donors a big round of applause. Why? Because nutrition-specific spending last year was $500 million. This year it's $1 billion. That's the good news, donors. The bad news is that you're expected to do this next year and the year after next because of some estimates I'll show you in a second. But I think the donors have really stepped up on nutrition in a fantastic way. I told you about the nutrition-specific spending is $1 billion in the report, and thank you for the donors for providing this data. More of the donors provided data on nutrition sensitive, which is also an incredibly laborious task. If it's laborious for the governments, it's laborious for the donors as well. And the nutrition sensitive spending, our best estimates are it's about 4 billion. So put that together, you get 5 billion, divide by the current overseas development assistance budget, the total aid budget, which is about 130 billion, and you get about 4% of spending on nutrition. I still think that percentage can go up. We in the GNR team think that can go up. And again, we need to work with our donor, all of us need to work with our donor champions to help them make the case for that number to go up to 5%, 6%, 7%. And there are 13 donors out of the 29 OECD donors, aid donors, who spend hardly anything on nutrition. 13 of them. I didn't want to name them here, but they're in the report. 3 of them are very, very generous aid donors, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Their percentage of GNI to aid is, I think, higher than the UK's, which is very good at 0.7%. And so we're having a launch event with those Scandinavian countries to see what we can do to improve their nutrition spending. But any of you have any connections with those 3 countries, they can help share the burden and increase the overall spend to nutrition. This is a conclusion from the World Bank IFPRI study, which some of you know about and have heard about. I don't know if Rob Hecht is still here, but he and Mira and their 2 teams have been working on the costing and the financing parts of this. And their bottom line conclusion is that to achieve the WHA stunting target for 37 high-burden countries, given existing spending, governments are going to have to at least double their spending over the next 10 years, and donors are going to have to at least quadruple their spending on these high-impact, nutrition-specific interventions over the next 10 years. Donors front-loading, governments back-loading. But it's very clear in their report, if governments don't at least double spending the donor spending is not going to amount to anything in a sustainable sense. So governments, you really need to step up your spending on nutrition. You really do. Otherwise you're not going to get to the targets. We talk about data a bit, quite a lot. I don't have too much time here. Here are some data gaps. We presented last year, we said there were only 99 countries that could actually measure whether they were off course or on course to meet the 4 WHO targets that we could report on last year. So we did a comparative piece of analysis. And for 2015, the good news is we have 108 countries that can track their progress on these 4 WHO indicators. So that's great. Again, there's still only 50 countries that can only report on one of them, and that, I suspect that's largely because of modeled data. So there's still lots of countries that just don't have the data or don't make it available to track progress. And many of those countries are middle-income and high-income countries. So we're in the SDG world, guys, high-income countries and middle-income countries. You also need to get your data into the WHO, UNICEF global databases. Your citizens need to hold you accountable for the progress that you are making towards the WHO targets that your governments signed up for your citizens. And we end with a chapter 10, which has some very specific calls to action. There are about 40 of them. Obviously, I don't have time to go into them very clearly here, and I can't actually read them because my eyesight's not that good. But they're basically around, we've still got some time to advocate for getting more nutrition indicators into the SDG indicator set. We're too late for goals, although we're quite happy with the goals. We're not very happy with the targets. There's only one mention of nutrition in one of the 169 targets. But if we can get some more indicators into the indicator set, that will be good. There's only 2, I think, right now. A number of us think there should be at least the 6 WHO indicators in the set. SCN put out a really nice note that's 20 or 25 organizations are solidly behind. That's the first one. And in the report we say which committee you need to lobby for and who you need to lobby with, because it's a political process. And if we want our indicators to be in there, we have to fight for them to be in there. I have to look around, excuse me, I can't read this. The Rio moment coming up, it's all shrouded in mystery and it's a shifting landscape, and who knows what it's going to be about. Who knows what's going to happen in Rio. But the GNR team think it's really important that the Rio event is an opportunity for countries to make pledges. On financing, that would be great. Yes. On targets, what is your vision for stunting reduction over the next 5 to 10 years? What is it for anemia reduction? What is it for under 5 overweight? What is it for exclusive breastfeeding? Those targets are just as important as the funding. So make a commitment to your targets at Rio. Strengthen the N4G commitments. We don't want as many fuzzy commitments in Rio. Obviously, implement your actions. We talk a lot about implementation in the report and say there's, on the undernutrition side, but also on the overnutrition side, lots of policies that are available not being implemented. We talk a lot about funding. You've heard the comments on funding. On climate, business and food systems, we have some very strong messages around. On climate, we feel like it's a really missed opportunity not to link in with the climate people. The climate people are looking very hard at the space between what's good for nutrition and what's good for mitigating emissions. And I think there are some very powerful alliances that can be built there. Climate funding is going to go up a lot in the next 10 years. And we've got a chance to influence that to work for nutrition. Food systems are very powerful drivers. The Lancet paper just published in September tells us diet is the #1 risk factor in the global burden of disease, the #1 risk factor. But we don't have any indicators on whether our food systems are nutrition friendly or not nutrition friendly. So the report says here's an indicator set that gets the discussion at least going. And on business, we call for greater dialogue on business. I know it sounds a bit feeble, but really people are just talking past each other. There's a group of people who think business is the answer to everything, and there's a group of people who think business should not be involved in nutrition at all. And then I think there's a silent majority in the middle that says, actually, I think in some places, in some contexts, for some groups, for some services and products, for some nutrition problems, business can play a really important role. But I've got no idea how to navigate that contested space with all of its minefields. I need some guidelines, and those guidelines at the moment don't exist. And finally, we say, identify the data gaps that exist and fill them. Not all data gaps need to be filled. The ones that do need to be filled are the ones that are stopping us doing things that we think are really going to have an impact on nutrition. Here's my final slide. It's a slightly jokey slide, so apologies for that, because it's a very serious topic, obviously. But I couldn't resist. I saw this article in The Economist in August or September of this year, and it was about designer babies, and it was talking about how in a sort of slightly dystopian future, we'll be able to modify DNA to get the babies with all these wonderful attributes. And I was looking at the picture. This is a picture from the magazine, and I haven't been sued yet for reproducing it. It's a picture from the magazine, and looking at it, and I'm thinking, well, high IQ, sprinting speed, that's muscle mass and body length, right? 20/20 vision, so good eyesight, and prevention of strokes. These are all things that we get from investing in children and adolescent girls and pregnant mothers. These are all things that we get from improved nutrition. So forget about designer babies. If you want them, just invest in nutrition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've been listening to this a few times and still very inspiring. What number captivate your attention? I'll leave you to think about that. And which would you like to act upon? So that's the thoughts for the session. It's a pleasure now that we move to the panel, and we have a very interesting, very good panel today. So let me invite them to the podium. First, Daisy de Marquez, San Focal Point, El Salvador, please. Maria Rosa de Baguio, from the Director of Mesa, Peru. William Chilufya, Zambia Civil Society Alliance. Nirja Chaudhry, Senior Journalist at Apartheid, India. Aissatou Jallo, Senior Advisor from NEPAD, African Union. Francesco Branca, Nutrition Director, World Health Organization. And Werner Schultink, Nutrition Director, UNICEF. Please join us. We talk of the accountability. So my first accountability is to you, to the audience, to try and do this as best in a time-efficient manner. So the first is that I would like to invite the panelists to reflect on what they have heard, and also they have already been provided with certain questions. So let me start off with you, Daisy. As the country representative and talking about the experience in your country in El Salvador, what are the main challenges you see in setting the nutrition targets? Oh, you need this to help translating. Please.
Sí, muy buenos días. de apoyar muy
We'll all need to support very forcefully the actions that are concerning the 1,000-day program, because I think that not acting and enabling and continuing to accept malnutrition is the worst injustice that we can have for a human being, because we're going to condemn this person to poverty, a lack of development of his or her full potential, therefore a very bad life quality. As far as the goals are concerned, I believe that we definitely have a big challenge in front of us for what concerns the goal of reducing the levels of anemia and low weight at birth. But I also believe that the biggest challenge we have in front of us as countries is to raise the awareness at the highest possible levels in terms of policymakers, the people who are defining the investments for nutrition. We also have to have an action on the private sector so that we have better resources for our actions. I think that the biggest challenge is raising the awareness of these very levels for what concerns the importance of nutrition for human development, the importance of nutrition for economic development, as well as the social one. So raising the awareness about the importance of these elements for sustainable development, and also to be able to convince them of the fact that this is a profitable investment, as we have seen in these days, and that there would be an advantage for them in investing in nutrition, because there's a significant return from that. And also to believe that we need these resources to be able to invest in specific nutritional actions in these first 1,000 days. We want to pursue an education strategy in order to orient the population to best practices, thus overcoming the problems of obesity, overweight, and chronic malnutrition. We want to have a monitoring system for nutrition so that we can continuously follow these important indicators and keep our level of interest very high to pursue our actions. And we also need to monitor what we are actually doing for all of these actions. And in order to do so, we need resources. We have to invest those who have the resources to invest them.
Convince others who are non-nutrition sector. Those are the challenges that are very important. So let me now invite the next panelist, Maria Rosa de Bocchio, to tell us about the experience in Peru. What are the main strengths and weaknesses to work with the multiple stakeholders, and what do you think would be one essential prerequisite to do, translate it from an idea to an action? Please.
Muy buenos días a todos.
Good morning to you all. I believe that, as was highlighted in the global report, the topic of nutrition is everyone's responsibility, everyone's accountability. So it's a key element that we continue to make sure how we are advancing, that we all do that in pursuing these goals. From this perspective, I will talk about very briefly the experience of Peru, considering the struggle against poverty involving both the state and the civil society. So basically, for what refers to the implementation of public policies as far as the nutrition of children is concerned, I would like to indicate the key factors. First of all, effective actions in the struggle against chronic malnutrition or illnutrition in children have been defined, agreed by the representatives of the government and the civil society in a broad process. that provides a drive for democratization of the political institutions of the country. This is something that was started up at the beginning of the century. The priority was given to agreement both at national and regional levels, and this entailed a stronger commitment, not just on the part of the state through public policies, but also on the part of different players and civil society. The second important factor is that an information system has been set up, a transparent one, a regular one, constant, concerning the indicators of the results that we need to obtain, as well as the priority action that need to be pursued, but also all the resources which are needed in order to make these actions effective. So transparency and regularity information were key elements. This made it possible to have a cross-monitoring approach. What do we mean by this cross-monitoring, shared monitoring concerning the theme we are tackling, so childhood nutrition? Well, first of all, we try to create horizontal relations between the government, the state, and the civil society, because we know that there's no horizontality. And the key elements were, first of all, having equal information, the same information, receiving the same sets of information on both sides in order to be able to carry out an appropriate analysis of how these actions are being implemented. Then, secondly, this space, this action must have an equal representation on both sides. And third, all the assessments that are carried out, both in terms of the progress and difficulties as well as recommendations, have to be carried out with the total consensus, so unanimity. If there is, and this is fundamental, so if there is no consensus, the monitoring report is not going to cover this. As a consequence, the kind of relationship that exists between the state and civil society is positive because there's a mutual exchange of information at this level. What kind of result has this approach produced as far as the monitoring system? So, which is the result of this program of attention and care for children's health? First of all, both the players become stronger, so both at the level of the government and the civil society, there's a better understanding of the repercussions of the public policy. And then this effort generated significant basis of knowledge on both the governmental and the civil society sides. And then also a trust-based relationship was created. So basically a space for exchanging views is created, and this is based on knowledge and trust. The main weaknesses concerned the issue of information. It was not possible to produce information at a local level, and the information that we have is at a national level, more aggregate at a regional level. And this gap, this lack of information, makes it difficult to introduce other local stakeholders or players. And then the civil society weakness, where some players, those which are most marginalized because they are the poorest, they find it difficult to participate. And the third problem is the lack of trust, the historic lack of trust that exists between the state and the community, so the civil society organizations. For what concerns the pre-requirement, I will conclude with this. I think that one important pre-requirement to ensure a shared monitoring approach that can become the basis to really provide results and provide results which are not fictitious but which are real ones, is to link permanently the political and technical aspects. Technical ones because they provide valid information, they validly support what we're doing, what we're analyzing, but also permanent political approach is fundamental. So it's very important to put these together, considering the different approaches that exist at the society level.
I can't speak Spanish, but excellent. This is really a good example of accountability at work. And very important. I think the partnership, government, civil society, you talk about the building trust. And this is where I think that this is the most important element for this to work and to last. And because that also will lead on to our next panelist, the role of civil society. So William, we're on to you. From your experience in Zambia, can you tell us how, what the role of civil society to make that nutrition a matter of everyone?
Thank you so much. The first thing that we have to get right is that we need to have our policies right. And what civil society has done, in particular in Zambia, is that we've contributed a great deal of organizing civil society and communities to contribute to policies, making them nutrition sensitive or nutrition driven. And this is very important because we feel this has an effect in terms of making allocations much more better for nutrition. The second thing that we are doing as civil society is that we are raising awareness on the importance of nutrition and creating demand for improved nutrition. And what we are doing, as you saw from Lawrence's presentation, we've got that big book called the Yellow Book that as CSO SAN, we have analyzed and simplified the information and distributed it, ensuring that people have a good understanding of how nutrition has been funded. So as civil society, we've been very good at packaging this information, ensuring that it's well accessible. We've also been offering constructive criticism to the government, not aimed at destroying, but building and ensuring that the government is constantly engaged and focused on improving nutrition in Zambia. And as civil society, we are also better placed to work with a cross-section of stakeholders, including politicians. And our aim is to make, and this is what we're doing now, is to make nutrition a political issue, but a non-partisan issue, such that when you have change of government, this would still go on, nutrition would still be on the table in Zambia. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And that's really an important issue. How to make this matter, nutrition, still relevant when you have the change of government. A lot of people have raised that, very valid issue. Thank you, William, for putting on that. Now we cannot neglect the voice, another voice in the society from the media. So let me come to you, Neerja Chowdhury, to tell us your experience, the role of media in Uttar Pradesh. How do you bring the debate into the public? And also, what about using data from different sources? What is your view on that? Please.
Thank you, and you've asked me 2-3 questions. I will, after the sweep of Mr. Haddad a short while ago, I would like to stick to our experience of the last 5-6 years to answer your questions. I'm a member of what is called the Citizens Alliance Against Malnutrition in India. It is a group that is driven by young parliamentarians across parties. And it has several eminent citizens. It came into existence 8 years ago, and that happened very spontaneously when there was a national survey which showed that 1 out of 2 children under 5 were malnourished. And it stunned a lot of people. So these young parliamentarians got together and said this cannot continue. And that is the relevance of the data that Mr. Haddad talked about. It was the data that shocked people into thinking what to do about it. So before we knew it, we had a group going and we went to the worst areas. In the years that followed, we went into several states to study the situation. And because the group was consisting of parliamentarians who were fighting in parliament in the morning, but making a case for nutrition of children in the afternoon before the Prime Minister, before the Leader of Opposition, they were heard. And so when we went to the states, we of course had the Chief Minister of the state with his entire officialdom come and talk to us about the nutrition situation, and we had the whole media contingent in that state ask us how this was coming about, how the group had got together and what its plans were. Before long, this group helped to put the issue of malnutrition on the radar. So you have the Finance Minister of India start his budget speech. In the first line, there is reference to malnutrition. You had last year a very contentious election campaign, and the now Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, was grilled a lot on the state of malnutrition in his state. So that's the kind of space the issue has created. There's a buzz around the issue. Then we felt we had to move from what to how. And that's where Maharashtra, which is a member of SUN, it's the second largest state in India, they showed the way. And again, data, the importance of data, and Mr. Haddad has made a study of this, how Maharashtra did it. They found that stunting had dropped by a whopping 16% in 6 years. Never had it happen anywhere in the world. So you had Mr. Haddad come and do a report, you had Lancet write about it, you had Boston come to India and studied how had Maharashtra done this. And what the report yielded was that the benefits had not been cornered by the well-to-do. The benefits had trickled down to the most poor, the most marginalized, which showed that the governance systems were working. And that's where the whole principle of accountability came. It wasn't a question of doing pilots. It was moving to putting systems in place, systems of governance in place. So the plot had moved beyond pilots to something else. Now, other states of India got very interested. UP got very interested. UP is very large, 215 million people. It probably has 4 or 5 countries above it. They set up a nutrition mission last year. Mr. Haddad was part of it. They're going to observe their anniversary. They're going in for doubly fortified salts. They have made their bureaucrats accountable for reducing malnutrition. They've said your confidential reports are going to be linked to it. So there's a lot of stirring in Uttar Pradesh. Now, I know you're hovering there, so I'm quickly going to end up. There are 13 states of India out of 29 who have now are ready to launch their nutrition missions. And a couple of them will be launched next month. And the secret of all this has been political backing at the top and dedicated, committed officers in government driving that process. And this group of parliamentarians, there are about 20 to 25 of them, with varying degrees of commitment, but there is a hardcore committed group at the center of it all. I would say, I would end with saying that we have many, many, many miles to cover. It's a huge country, it's a daunting challenge, a challenge that has to be taken on. And one final word I want to say, you know, there are moments in history when the same idea grips the entire globe. We know in the last century, the fight against colonialism was one such idea. We know gender and women's empowerment has been one such idea. And now, to combat malnutrition worldwide is another idea which I feel is catching the imagination of the entire globe. That no child will die because of malnutrition, and that every child will have the chance to attain her fullest potential. And I feel those of us here, we are really privileged to be part of this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very inspiring. And I really love the word young. the young group. I should really find some group like that to join. But as you have heard from the first day, we know these are where lots of voices that come from non-nutrition sector, but they believe in it, really bears weight. And this is a good example. Thank you for all that experiences. From that point on, we will now move to another continent, the African Union. So, Aissatou, please tell us about how you monitor the political commitment of African states for the nutrition strategy.
Thank you very much. And from the previous speaker saying that they had many more miles to cover, I will also say the same for the African continent. We have many miles to cover, but we have also taken major steps. And I will focus on the report by Lawrence Haddad on one of the recommendations, which is to identify the data gaps that hinder action and fill them. Yesterday, I was in two of the workshops. One, the media, two, the parliamentarians. And from both workshops, what came out loud and clear, and I'm looking straight at the Member of Parliament from Zimbabwe, was information. We need information to advocate. We need information to take action. We need information for accountability. And that's where I'm going to focus on. Because information is key for us in NEPAD. And as we look at the data presented by Lawrence Haddad, there is a lot of information, but still there are major data gaps. Now, why am I focusing on data? A decade ago, our major outcry was the lack of political will in Africa. I remember the IFPRI conference hosted by the government of Uganda in 2004, where we talked about achieving food security and nutrition by 2020. Most of the participants there did not believe it was possible because there was no political will or commitment. Today it's different. A decade later, in 2014, our African Union heads of state and government met in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, and they adopted two declarations. One on agriculture, which is well known, and much less known is the one on nutrition security. And both of these declarations committed to ending hunger within a decade by 2025, and to reduce stunting to 10%. Very ambitious, but this is what we were looking for. So now it's time to take action, and there's a sense of urgency. But we need the data and we need the information. Because they also committed, the focus was on results and impact and on accountability. Biennial reporting, whereby every 2 years to report on progress and performance. So the data, again, is key. So I wish to take this opportunity to thank Lawrence Haddad and team for producing an Africa brief from the Global Nutrition Report, which we're going to use to advocate for action, to advocate for accountability. And also, we are looking at accountability. How do we encourage our governments? And how do we work with the parliamentarians to make sure that we not only advocate, but there's accountability? So we are working with another team where Lawrence Haddad was also part of, and that's the IDS, looking at the Hunger and Nutrition Commitment Index, which looks at what governments are doing, how are they committed to reducing hunger and improving nutrition. And this is in line with the commitments taken by our heads of state. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that's really a perfect flow. Data, data, data. Wow, who should we look up to? but the next person next to you. Isa too. And Francesco, can you help? The call from member states and in many places, so still a lot of critical data gaps needed. What do you think would be in coming years at the role of agencies on UN family can help the member states on this, please?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say that the UN is solidly behind the Global Nutrition Report. We had 5 our heads of agency who have signed a statement which is in the preface, and have a look. And this is certainly because we believe that it's important to have a whole sector aligned behind a report like this to guide action and to discuss the progress. We have similar experience for tuberculosis, malaria, where this annual report, tobacco, annual reports really drive that action. And it's important to know where we are with the achievement of the WHO targets. But it's not only about the progress, it's also to highlight the next steps. And you've heard, food systems. We had this international conference of nutrition last year, but we need to implement it. And changing the food system is not an easy task. So having 10 years of action ahead of us with some clear commitments, that's what we want to have. So clearly the global report is helping there. Accountability. I mean, if we want to have something happening, we need to have some clear commitment. And as you heard, unfortunately, the commitments are not always clear, they're not always marked and measurable. So we need those clear commitments, and then we will be able to have some data supporting the measurement of the progress. And we have data gaps. Why do we have data gaps? Well, first of all, because we have different priorities. So if we don't get clearly a set of targets at country level that we're able to measure, then it's very difficult to push policymakers to ask for that data. So first step is really to have countries setting their targets and having country ownership of targets so that they could have monitoring frameworks. And that's where the UN can help. So UN can certainly help setting those targets. We have tools, we have experience, we can actually exchange the good practices and the good experience between one country and another. And then we need to have a good set of indicators. And that's again where we can help. Because UN is really trying to convene the different stakeholders and trying to find some consensus around the best indicators, the ones that are measuring most clearly, most effectively, what we need to know. And that's basically 2 things. One is the outcomes. So where we are with the nutritional status. We have the 6 global targets, and we have 6 indicators which are relevant for them. But we also need to measure how we're getting there and at what level we may have bottlenecks that we have to address. So we need to have the process indicators. So we do have to a great extent, this set of indicators, and you have the WHO approved the Global Nutrition Monitoring Framework, but we need to do more because we need to cover the whole areas. And I'd like to conclude by saying that I think we have opportunities there. The opportunities are given by the fact that Sustainable Development Goals are broadly covering many aspects of nutrition. If we are able to really put in a larger number of indicators in the framework of monitoring SDGs, that would be our way to advance more substantially in all areas that are required to improve nutrition globally. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Francesco, for that. And it really offers help and hope for the member states in the coming years. And what a good ending, as if you know what Werner's gonna come on board. I think that we've heard you, Werner, to talk about nutrition in the SDG and your comment. And I think that this is such a lovely time to take a look at it further from the perspectives of working with the UN families. How do you see this happening? Please.
Thank you, Emorn. If you allow me, first a very brief comment on the Global Nutrition Report. 7 to 8 years ago, when I informed senior management in my organization that for nutrition we would be shifting our focus on measuring underweight to stunting, they all looked puzzled and they were afraid because they said it will take you generations to reduce stunting. We see that you can change, you can make a big dent in stunting in a generation. Relatively quickly, we can drive down stunting rates. Ghana is the latest example. This should all encourage us and make us really enthusiastic and gung-ho. We can change this. And that is, I think, one of the main messages. Number two, I would very much like to agree with Francesco, my brother from my sister agency. We have a nutrition target which talks about malnutrition in children, but also about malnutrition in women. How can it be that there is no indicator proposed for the SDGs to measure progress on undernutrition in women? To me, it is not acceptable. How can we not have an indicator on breastfeeding? The single most effective intervention to drive down mortality in infants and young babies. I don't get that. So I really call upon the Sun as a whole and many of the member states here to push for this. Now let me talk a little bit also about accountability and data. And let me focus on what you need at country level to hold decision makers and also other stakeholders accountable. You know, we have different levels of data. The most known data are those who are produced by large-scale, nationally representative household data surveys. And then you get the data on stunting, on wasting, on certain rates, and so on. But they are collected once every 2 to 3 years, and I think in many ways they are not good enough to be on the ball, to hold people accountable on a regular basis, week to week, month to month. We need other data, and the UN can help with that. We can help, and we do provide data which bring information from different sectors together. FAO, WFP, UNICEF, WHO work together to combine data on nutrition, food security, health. And I think it's important to do this across sectors. After all, nutrition is determined by what happens in multiple sectors. Another important issue is that we can help to track in innovative ways information on bottlenecks which impede the effective delivery of important social services. For example, immunization, vitamin A supplementation. If no supplies are present in health centers or other places, we won't make progress and we will only know maybe once a year. But if we track availability using, for example, tablets, smartphones, you are able to react immediately, you're able to hold your service delivery people accountable, and so on. We do these things right now. There are good examples, for example, from Nigeria, where this is happening. And I think that innovation and looking at important information which comes in on a monthly basis is the way towards improved accountability and improved service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That really has been helpful, where member states can now see how they can really get help and work together with the UN families, particularly on the data system, which I think the nutrition-sensitive sectors, but you may have seen on CNN, the climate change are now on board. Many of those information we can be able to gather, make it more powerful, and be able to speak to different audiences that you need to. So I would like to really thank all the panelists for all those. Now, you must have thoughts in your mind. So if you, we are going to have to do a teamwork here, to work together for the next 15 minutes to get your input. I need your cooperation and help. For those of you who have, who would like to address questions, please be as concise as you can and identify which question, which panelist you would like to address that to. So one per person, please. And I'm going to do this. So it's going to be 4 sections here. All right? The microphone people are ready. So we're going to do 2 rounds of wave. Gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're just gonna go from this one. So let's from that last one. Anyone who has microphone? Yes, please. So the microphone staff will help, the team here will be helpful. It's a first come, first serve type basis. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to direct my question to William Emmanuel from Swaziland. William, you have said you criticize constructively, and I want you to help me, coming from civil society, because I have found it very challenging to be critical and to be understood, particularly by politicians. And how do you achieve that? Thank you.
Okay. Second question from this section, please.
Okay. Bonjour.
Good morning. I am come from the civil society in Guinea, and my question is for the third member of the panel, the third panelist, the third speaker, who talked about the difficulty concerning expressing criticism on the part of civil society. You talked about trust. What kind of trust do you mean concerning our communities? So the communities that we want to defend, it's a question, or trust among ourselves as a civil society or the political world we have to deal with?
The lady right here, please. Okay, we're going to collect questions, and then the panelists will do one swoop. Okay, so keep your be patient, please.
My question is on the issue of the parliamentarians supporting the issue of change. We haven't been trained. Are you going to provide the country or the civil societies to train us so that we have an idea of what nutrition is? What is it?
So I think that I'll get that to Necha. This row, who has the hand up, please? Which one? Yes. It's 1 minute. There's somebody.
Yeah, this question is for Lawrence. What should be the...
For me?
Lawrence.
Oh, for Lawrence, sorry.
What should be our goal for Rio in terms of the financial number? What should we be aiming for? Thanks.
Okay. All right. So now, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm from Namibia. I'm happy to see Dr. Haddad here again. I attended the launch of the Global Nutrition Report in New York. It was some kind of a side event. We expected some heads of state to be there. They were not there. It's a very important report. My concern is how could governments be made aware of this report? Through which channel can governments receive this report? Thank you.
Thank you. This section? Okay, she has her hands up, so 1 minute, okay? We'll get back to you.
Good morning, I'm going to speak in Portuguese. So my question is for, and
I would like to know what we can do in order to reach the goals. So once we have the indicator, the specific indicator, I would like to know how we can actually use it to apply it to another sector that is not simply concerning nutrition, because we have 2 indicators for each one. So we have this limit if I don't go wrong. Thank you.
Como la nutrición es la vida misma, yo quisiera.
Since nutrition is life, I would like to know whether the UN have already a plan to monitor the commitment of the part of 193 heads of state, because all the goals, all the 17 goals are all associated with nutrition. Are they going to go monitoring, to go do a check on the resources that the heads of states are going to allocate to these goals in the future, or not?
Brief as you can. So we.
Merci. Je viens du Burkina Faso et ma question.
I come from Burkina Faso, and my question concerns nutrition. I would like to know whether the estimates that have been provided can be used. How can they actually be used to improve nutrition and specific action which are related to it? Because there are many actions at a local level that have not turned into broader scale programs. And so these estimates, these sets of data, can they favor the implementation of plans, and so to bring the plans from a local level to a higher level, and in order to allocate resources so that resources can be allocated to broader scale plans?
Here, the response. I know we have so many, and so sorry to have to, but first let's get, I know William has a few, please, and then we'll try.
Thank you so much. First of all, I need to also mention that even civil society, we need to, ourselves as civil society, we also have to be accountable to our constituencies and to all stakeholders around nutrition. And in terms of how have we managed as civil society scaling up nutrition in Zambia, is that one key thing that we've done is that we've made clear of the things that we want to do. We have a document in place which we call the 10 key asks, which we have justified to government to say we're looking for, political will, increased financial resources to nutrition, data, reforming programs, among others. So we've been very, very clear in terms of our key recommendation, and that has gained us the trust from the government. And the fact that we consulted the government itself, cooperating partners on some of these key recommendations, and that has really helped. So our approach mainly is in such a way that we come out to say so much more can be done, and not to say that government is completely doing nothing. So we try to provide hope in our interventions as civil society. Thank you very much.
You can also discuss with William after too for clarification.
Sí, a la pregunta sobre la confianza, ¿qué tipo de confianza y entre quiénes?
So, as to the question about trust, what kind of trust and among whom? The idea is that we are going to build some kind of proximity between those who manage the public sector from a government perspective and the civil society, which is the recipient of the services, and where we can actually observe the results, and the citizens at large. So it is this kind of trust that is important. So through a common monitoring to what is happening in the public policy has to be taken into account, and not just considering results. Civil society in general is more informed about the outcome they want to seek, but in general they're not informed about what is being done, what needs to be done in order to be able to obtain such results. And the advantage is that through a formalization process, through focusing on the actual outcome, the civil society can relate the results, the outcomes, with the actions which are needed in order to pursue those goals. And also focusing on the needed resources in order to make such action possible. So the trust I was referring to is precisely this. When we discuss together, when we have common information, when we build points that are agreed upon, there is a proximity climate which is created. So the civil servants is closer to what we're doing, to what the civil society is doing. So this means understanding one another a bit more. But this is not necessarily total trust or total proximity. You may have different viewpoints. Nonetheless, we will walk together, we work together on various issues, so with a common view, closer.
Thank you. Thank you, Emorn. First, I want to apologize because I didn't acknowledge all the hundreds of people responsible for the GNR, and I didn't acknowledge Emorn, who's been a fantastic co-chair, and Corinna Hawkes, who's also been a wonderful co-chair. And we have a number of the independent expert group in the audience, Patricia, Eve, Mohammed, and Dang. And then we probably also have a bunch of people in the audience who've written panels and contributed all sorts of stuff. And Tara Sham is also in the audience, who's the coordinator of the whole thing. Augustin and Farouk are our co-chairs on the stakeholder group. So a big thank you to everyone. I have 3 questions, I think. And I just want a quick observation on the parliamentarians. I was in Namibia I was kindly invited by SADC and UNICEF to attend the Southern African Development Corporation meeting, where they brought together MPs from 15 countries, together with UNICEF staff and other nutrition experts. And I do think we are missing a trick with MPs. I think they are a really important, influential group of potential champions, current champions, as Nia just said, but also potential champions, and we should be doing more with them. On Lucy's question, a nice easy one, Lucy, thank you. On London 2013, there were 25 countries that made commitments, and there were another 75 organizations that made commitments. So there were 100 signatories, and they made 300 commitments between them. So I'd like to see that number go up. I don't know, you tell me what number is good for you. I'd like to see it doubled. I'd like to see 200 signatories instead of 100. I'd like to see twice as many commitments. That's number one. Number two, I'd like to see the commitments be really smart. Really not fuzzy, wishy-washy, we'll do what we're kind of doing and we'll talk to people. There were lots of those in the London summit. Get rid of those. Have some really specific ones. We will do this by this date, and this is how we will demonstrate we're going to do it. Really simple stuff. Not easy to do in big bureaucracies, but nevertheless, we should be pushing for that. The third thing is what I said when I was on the platform. I'd like to see the commitments be, backing up what Francesco and Werner said, I'd like to see the commitments to be around national level targets, because these global targets are our global targets. We're applying them at the country level, and countries can easily say, well, you're judging me by that global target, but that's not my target. I don't recognize that or own it. Well, if you don't have your own target, that's the target we have to use, but get your own target. Develop your own target. And I'd like to see that at Rio. And I'd like to see some spending increases, Lucy. the work that World Bank and IFPRI and 1,000 Days are doing is probably our best bet for nutrition-specific stuff, and I'm waiting with bated breath to see the next round of analyses. On the question about, nearly finished, Emorn, on the question about how do we get the report to leaders, we only had one head of state who was supposed to be there and couldn't be there. There are multiple pathways to heads of state for this report. In India, we're organizing a launch in Delhi through one of our IEG members, Aarti Ahuja. She knows somebody in the Prime Minister's office, a head bureaucrat. She said, why don't you just send them an email and pick up the phone and call them? So we did that, and we said, would the Prime Minister be available to open this up? And they said, well, we can't promise anything, but send us the report. So we did. So every country will have multiple pathways, and all of you, if you want our help to do that, please ask us. But you're really the people that can do it. We can't do it. Another question from Burkina Faso about how do we scale up? How do we get things that are promising at the local level scaled up to the national level? I think certainly not sufficient, but I think it is necessary. Evaluate it and demonstrate it has a high impact. That's the first step to getting it scaled up.
Thank you very much. And I think that you want to answer something about the parliamentarians. How can you help?
Yes.
I think this is here.
Our friend here asked about adequate information to be made available to parliamentarians. Have I got that right? I think you spoke about it earlier also. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we know what is malnutrition, but actually most people do not know. And they do not know the impact. In fact, Mr. Ratan Tata, one of our corporate leaders in India, was recently 2 weeks ago making this request that we need to come out with data, visuals, images that shock people, that jolt people. And one of the reasons why this parliamentarians group in India has got together is because they see that it is the most important issue. It doesn't give them votes, but it's even more important than education, because if you've lost that battle in the first 2 years of life, then you've lost it. Then those people are going to be non-productive, less than productive, they are going to be susceptible to physical challenges, mental retardation, and etc., etc. And we have a population 65% under the age of 30. We talk about our demographic dividend. Where is it going to lead us? So those are the questions that malnutrition now is posing. And I think I would like Mr. Haddad, for instance, to translate the global report for India in those tangibles. What is it that's going to hit the policymaker in India in the report that you have?
Thank you very much. More homework, Lawrence. We're gathering, but to get that, user-friendly. Yes, I think you have some points. Sorry, thank you very much.
I'll try to be brief.
Yeah. We'll give you the last one.
I just want to give a straight answer to the Member of Parliament that NEPAD is indeed targeting parliamentarians, not just to advocate for an increase in the budget and not just for policies, but also to advocate to their constituencies, the communities who, at the end of the day, we're really targeting, and you have those constituencies. And then on the issue of making governments aware of the report, I did mention earlier that for the Malabo Declaration endorsed by heads of state and government, the focus was on accountability, commitment to mutual accountability to actions and results. And how do we do that? How do we monitor performance and progress? By the use of data. And we have the CADEP result framework where we're going to conduct a biennial review looking at data. And that is why we're working with Lawrence Haddad and team to get the GNR into a brief that we're going to use to advocate at the highest level of government heads of state. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Werner.
Yeah, I'll try to be very quick. I'll start with the last question, which looked at whether cost estimates took into consideration the cost of scaling up. Yes, they do. The estimates provided by World Bank and by other groups do indeed take the scaling up cost into consideration. They're based on either experience or on modeling, and they are inclusive of scaling up. There was a question on how to, and the word control was used, control the budget of states to do more on nutrition. First of all, I think we cannot use the word control. But an important thing, and then it comes back to accountability. Within the Sun movement, we cannot use, let's say, accountability as a top-down mechanism. But we can use accountability by the provision of open and transparent data, of discussion, and frequent interaction. And I think the basis is to start making budget data available, analyze whether it is enough or not, and knowing whether we will be able to achieve targets related to those budgets. Then there was a question in Portuguese, and I had trouble with my translation thing, so I'm very tempted to give this now to Francesco, but I'll try to do it briefly. I think my understanding was that how can we use information and indicators from various fields, and how can we bring those together, or how can we bring nutrition indicators into other fields? I think that the best answer I can give to this is we see often that improvements in nutritional status take place, and they are more difficult to relate to improvement in certain fields of nutrition, such as infant feeding or otherwise. But we do see, for example, that the use of ORS to treat diarrhea goes up enormously, or the coverage of social safety nets for the most poor people is improving, or food supplements being provided, and so on. Bringing all those data together gives you a better insight what led to improvements in nutrition or which can lead to deterioration.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. Oh, Francesco, you still have a little?
Yeah, just one addition. I think I picked a couple of questions, one really on what to do to reach the goals, and then how we monitor the resources there. And clearly we know what are the effective actions, at least the direct nutrition interventions. But we also now have a good framework to understand what we should be doing in the other sectors. Remember, we have a framework for action with 60 recommendations spanning from health to agriculture to social protection, and we have increasing experience on what to do. So I think the first step is being clear about the implementation mechanism. And we have a great deal there, but there must be a specific way of each country's. So we want to see the commitments to do those things which are available there. And then the next step is clearly to monitor that. And yes, we will work together to identify the easy way to do the monitoring, and we have a tool also to report that. But first thing is make the commitments, make them smart, and then we'll work together toward the achievement of all the goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm afraid that because of the time, I wish we have much, much more. But the Sun movement, the core of this is to share and learn. I would encourage you to keep sharing, learning, discussing with the panelists and each others. A few points to end up with. We talk about building trust and accountability. This is, I think, go together. Talk about smart commitment, the national targets, malnutrition as a social justice that we should link to the global agenda, as well as particularly pushing the sustainable development goals. Data, the power of that from every levels, and information that has a power to change what we are doing. This is what the session is all about. The action is now in your hands. And I do believe we have enough 55 countries and stakeholders here in this room to be able to move in the coming year. The target that we want to see, to free this world for once of malnutrition. Please give a hand to the panelists who has really been instrumental in this session. And thank you, everyone. I am so sorry that we cannot accommodate every questions and all the comments that you have in your heart. And I apologize for not having enough time to do so. So thank you very much, and hope to see you in the coming session. We have a word from the housekeeping, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to do my best Tom Arnold impression now, just before you enjoy a nice coffee break. Just a few. I won't do an Irish accent, by the way. That'd be terrible. But just a few notes. We've got 37 of these headsets, which may have accidentally been placed in bags yesterday. If you could just make sure that you check your bag before you leave and return the headsets, that would be excellent. We currently don't have enough for everybody to take to the next workshop sessions, so please check them if you have them and return them over to the desk in the right-hand corner. In your orange bag, you'll find a feedback form as well for the feedback from the global gathering. It's also in this guidebook here. If you're able to fill that out before the end of the day, that would be excellent, and hand them to one of the Sun Movement Secretariat staff members. And just quickly, we'll go now to coffee, but following that we'll have a series of workshops. The first one is on resource mobilisation to scale up impact on nutrition, and that'll take place in Amber Room 1 and 2. The next one is National Information Platforms on Nutrition, and that will take place in Amber Room 5 and 6. The third one is Innovations in Social and Behaviour Change Communication for Nutrition. That'll take place in Amber 7 and 8. In Amber 3 and 4, the discussion will be on the use of information and evidence in policy making for nutrition, platforms and processes. And back here in the plenary room, there'll be a discussion of nutrition in the Sustainable Development Goals. What does this mean for implementation and impact at country level? And finally, there'll be a very special capacity building session, a step-by-step guide to effective advocacy for nutrition. So those are the sessions which will take place after the tea break, and we'll come back to the plenary hall at 2 p.m. for workshop reflections. Enjoy your coffee. Thank you.
Amayi oyembekezera aje zakudya zobatatazi zochokera m'magulu onse asanu ndi limodzi. Azakudya zomwe zimapezeka kudera lawo tsiku ndi tsiku. Zakudya monga izi: gulu la zanyemba, nandolokobwe, gulu la zanyama, ziwala mbewa, gulu la zamafuta, mapeya la mtedza, gulu la zipatso, thochi mango, gulu la zamasamba, kholowa denje bonongwe, gulu la zokhutitsa, mbatata.